Hi everyone, thank you for all being here. So this is our panel of speakers, and today we're going to be talking about how to nail your interview and get into the creative industry. My name is Rosie, and I'm beginning a platform for emerging creatives to break into the industry, find opportunities, and connect with the industries that they want to get into. So I'm going to hand over to our panel to introduce themselves, but we've got Dan, Celia, and Ash today, and yeah.
Hi, I'm Dan Poole. I have a recruitment business. I'm specialised in finding mostly design, but also creators for ad agencies.
Hello, I'm Celia, and I'm the founder of Tiny Studios. We're a small video production company based very locally, actually, and we focus on making meaningful branded content through meaningful relationships.
Hi everyone, I'm Ash. I'm one of the group ECDs at Crow. We're an integrated ad agency. We have offices across the UK, including agencies such as Liberty, which some of you may have heard of as they're a youth marketing agency.
Thank you. So we're going to kickstart. So we're going to walk through not just how to nail the actual interview, but how to get the interview, what you should prepare for, and everything like that. But firstly, let's start with, can each of you share a bit about your background and your journeys into the creative industries, please?
Okay, I'll go first. Mine was quite long-winded, so I think I was always really passionate about sort of art and creativity, and ended up in some quite odd jobs until I was a little bit more mature than most grads. And then I saved up enough money to go back and study LCP or LCC as it is now, as a more mature student. And then on my final year as I graduated, my first son came along. And I was kind of a bit of crossroads, really, so I tried to work out what I was going to do to combine that passion and also support a family. So I got into creative recruitment, and I've been recruiting designers and creatives for 17, 18 years now, and here I am.
Thank you.
I had a slightly different route, which might be nice, but I actually went straight into the industry from leaving school. I had decided I wanted to be a filmmaker from an early age, making quite cringe music videos and putting them on YouTube. Luckily, I thought that probably wasn't the way to make the big bucks, although probably now it might be, I don't know. But at the time, I'd really developed this skill and was looking into universities. I actually looked at LCC. And fortunately, someone very cleverly there said, you do realize you don't need to go into this as an 18-year-old. Very few of our grads actually are fresh out of school. So why don't you just go and hone your skills a bit and then come back and you can be a more mature student, which is a good plan. And actually, it was when I was doing that I started, I just went and tried to get work, got work experience with production companies, and started building up my own client base as a videographer. And then by the time I might have even come to think of going to uni, I'd actually already, made the career that at the time I wanted. I could see it was going to go somewhere basically off my own back because the clients kind of grew, and I sort of was able to, then 3 years later launch Tiny. So just went straight for it.
Yes, thank you.
And I actually started my career back in the day as a junior web designer. So I don't know if that role really exists anymore. As you can imagine, over the last 18, 20 years, things have kind of changed in the kind of design and ad industry. But I think what I've kind of gained from that is that change is constant. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that later on. But that's really helped me throughout the years. And I've been lucky enough to interview many juniors over kind of the last 18 years or so. And many of those juniors have now kind of CDs in their own right. So hopefully some of that experience I can kind of share today and kind of pass that knowledge on, I guess.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I think it's a perfect example of how there are so many different routes into the creative industry, and if it's going to university, if it's not going to university, it's just so broad. And it kind of leads me on to my next question is, whatever kind of route you take, you always need a portfolio, you always need to showcase your work. So do you guys have any tips on how best to create that portfolio of work, how to find the kind of projects to build on and things like that? I don't know who wants to go.
Yeah, so it's quite a lot to factor in, really. I guess for me, it's when you're showcasing your work, it's about showcasing it in a really quite sort of simple, legible way. Let your work do the talking. Try not to overcomplicate the design of your portfolio. Some people have really complex, quite sort of fussy websites, which I find quite difficult to navigate. So for me, like a really nicely laid out PDF works really well, depending obviously what you're putting in there. But then also, like in terms of content, maybe think about where you're actually, who you're meeting, what sort of agency, what sort of person you're speaking to, what they'll be interested in, how you're aligned with that agency or client, and then try and curate it towards that, really.
Yeah, I think I'd agree that actually a lot of creatives spend a lot of time building a website, which is amazing and can be a really useful resource, but I think they don't need to be overcomplicated. We often find, I mean, the first thing I'll do probably when I am looking to hire, in the video world at least, will be check the Instagram, like, is it up to date? What's the most recent work? Because I think it's much easier to keep that up to date. You know, you're busy, you've got things to do. I'm not expecting you to keep your website up to date, but I think just your Instagram with your recent work and sort of what went into it is sort of an easy platform to actually have your portfolio being quite constantly updated. And it doesn't have to be a public thing. It could just be something you share. And then, yeah, I mean, I guess creating relevant work for who you're applying to, I think almost as spec work, if you have time, is a really great way to cut through the noise of other applicants and being like, I know what you guys do and I know I can do it. Here's an example.
And sorry, just to jump on that, is with showing your work on social media, do you think it is worthwhile to also show the process and not just the finished work, but actually how you how you do the work and the creative process of that?
Yeah, 100%. I guess it's like in anything you're told at school, show your workings. Like people like to, especially if they're going to work with you over a long period of time, if that's on a full-time job or a longer-term project, you want to know how that person is going to think. Is it going to work with how you like to think, or is it going to challenge it? That might be exciting for them as well.
Yeah, brilliant, thanks.
I'd say think about how you can be selective about what's in your portfolio. I think a lot of people graduate with a lot of work and you've put all of that blood, sweat and tears into each of those projects and you want to show all of them off. But like Dan was saying, sometimes when you're looking at those websites, there's so much on there that it can feel quite overwhelming. As you can imagine, CDs are looking through lots of portfolios back to back. So when you're a bit more selective about the work that goes in there and a little bit more crafted in terms of the structure of the order in which it's presented, it can really kind of help CDs and senior creators reviewing your work navigate the kind of work that you want them to see a lot easier.
That's really helpful. And also, I mean, there are so many creatives out there. It almost feels like, especially with social media, actually, it's almost feels an impossible job to stand out, get into creative industry, even get your, as you mentioned, you guys see hundreds of portfolios. So how can you stand out? Is there any kind of particular projects you do? Is it a way you send the portfolio? What kind of things can you do as an emerging creative?
I think one of the most important things is knowing where you're sending your details, who you're sending it to, and like why you're sending it to that person. Like, are you going to be a good fit for that place? Are you going to be a good fit for that agency? Do you know what that agency does? Does your work reflect that? Would they be interested in seeing you? And again, I just think like make your work legible, make it sort of speak for itself. So that for me is really important. That I don't want to spend too long trying to find the work or make it easy for me and tell me why you're applying for my job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think for freelance work, I think obviously in video industry, and I appreciate this event is a lot more design-based, so I hope there are things you can take from this, but I think you have the benefit that you can actually be on set if you're in the kind of if you're on shoots, and that's a really good way to actually just, if you get an opportunity to do work experience or be a runner on set as a first thing, just be unbelievably nice. And I'm sure this goes the same with every industry of any opportunity you get, is like make yourself known. I think personal brands are a big thing across businesses now in general, so why don't you treat that the same as for yourself, of be memorable, be someone that they go, God, they were very helpful and they were really lovely as well. So that will get you back. And I think on the application side, when you know you're one of 100,000, maybe not, I've not seen it, but like, I don't know, a Loom video alongside your PDF portfolio, just being like, hey, I'm going to talk you through what I'm doing. Might be a bit left field, but it might get attention. We had an application the other day that they just made like a sort of, essentially kind of a TikTok video talking to Tiny, like, hey, Tiny, this is what I do. And then they edited together a lot of their different work. And yeah, caught my attention.
That's super interesting. Thank you.
I'd say think about how you can get your personality across in the work. Quite often we see new grads kind of addressing a lot of the same briefs. So if we're looking at several grads from a certain uni or several grads that have taken on D&AD briefs, for example, sometimes as a CD you're looking through these briefs and it's very kind of, oh, they've addressed that brief and they've kind of done the same thing or a similar thing to what everyone else has done. So really have a think about how can I add my personal viewpoint or my personal approach, or how can I do this differently that really gets across who I am as a creative, because that will really make you stand out. And really kind of think about how is a CD going to remember that your portfolio in terms of your work, so it's not kind of the same as what everyone else is going to be sharing.
Yeah, I think, sorry, just to jump in, I think we see that quite a few times with more senior designers. They'll have their sort of commercial portfolio, and then they'll have a link to the Instagram, which shows their sort of non-commercial work, which shows their personality. It shows really what they can do, how they can sort of flex their creative muscles, what they can bring to projects with that sort of creative freedom, if that's allowed.
Yeah, exactly. It's really showing that you're not just a rule follower following kind of everything that the course leaders told you to do, but actually you're genuinely creative person. So even if it's something outside of work so some of our juniors at the moment, one of them's got a clothing line, one of them sings opera on the side. There's all kinds of things, what is it outside of your portfolio that makes you you? And that's what kind of is a thing we will remember, when we walk out of that interview. It's kind of, oh, they had a brilliant portfolio, they had great ideas, and they were really well crafted, but also, can you believe they're an opera singer as well? That's what's the kind of thing that's really going to sit with you. Who are you as a person?
I think that's really interesting. And so the platform that I'm building, Prodigies, we're trying to really incorporate that as well. So it's like acknowledging that, yeah, okay, you might be an artist or you might work in brands, but actually you might be, the opera singer, or you might do something completely different. And we had a talk in February, and the person who I was interviewing was actually saying that how she got into the industry was sending cupcakes to the office. And like, obviously, it's silly. It's not exactly, what you typically think of like professional, but it actually got her in. And I think, what you guys are saying is the same, is like just find your own way to show your personality.
I'd say some of the back to basics stuff as well. So, I mean, obviously you hear all these stories, don't you, about like cupcakes or people making album art covers from kind of Play-Doh, all the kind of really creative, cool approaches. But I'd also say, we've had some juniors kind of apply and not hear a response straight away. So we've had them kind of call us and leave us a voicemail. So one of our juniors that are in the team at the moment, actually, he left us a voicemail and we got him in straight away. We loved him. And we offered him a job that same day. So there is something kind of that kind of old school thing where everyone else is emailing or everyone else is sending a LinkedIn message. What can you do? Can you pick up the phone? More recently, we had someone that was after a placement just knock on the front door to say, introduce themselves. Oh, I live down the road. I'm a creative. I've just graduated. I'm looking for placements. And again, we'll get her in for a placement. So it's kind of like thinking a bit outside of the box. It doesn't have to be some crazy, obviously we love those crazy ideas where it's cupcakes or whatever it is, but sometimes it's that back to basic stuff as well. Like, are you thinking about how can I genuinely connect with the people that are in that agency because I, genuinely want to work with them?
Yeah, and I guess it's also the more human kind of personality side. It's not all just like online social media. Something I feel like everyone's trying to move away from anyway, like from, more human perspective.
Definitely.
And so when you are, okay, let's say you've got through the door, you've got that interview, or you've got that pitch, how do you go about preparing for it?
I mean, I think you touched on it earlier, research on who you're talking to. I have done interviews with people who have obviously applied, and then when it comes to the interview, I can just tell that it's tricky because it does go both ways. Obviously, they are just one of a few people we're talking to, so it is only fair that the company knows that they are also one of maybe only a few companies you're talking to. That's absolutely fine, but I think doing the research so that it is clear why you want to work at this company beyond the first bit of work that's on their website. You know, if you're asked that question, what's your favourite project? Or we sometimes actually ask, which project of ours would you have liked to work on and how would you have done it differently? And quite often, one that we hear is, you know, it'll be the one that's currently on the homepage of our website. And that's absolutely fine, especially if you can work your way through a good answer. I can tell it's quick thinking. But I think when you can tell that people really align with the company, that, you know, I'm a small company, there are 6 of us, like, of course I care about this a lot. So if I can feel that they care too, that goes a really long way. And culture's huge for us, so we want people who are going to be not just passionate about the craft, but also what we're doing on a wider scale with the company.
Super interesting. And also, talking about culture, how do, from an emerging creator's perspective or creative's perspective, how do you know that you aligned with the people that you're trying to work with? Twisting it.
I think that comes down to sort of asking a lot of questions again in the interview process to sort of, you know, ask them about the culture. What is your culture like in your agency? You know, what are you doing socially? How do you support grads? Like, how do you invest in them? What's the culture of the agency like? What's the culture of the team like? Ask as many questions as you can. And that shows interest as well, that you're engaged and interested in the agency.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, like Dan said, you know, it's asking those questions and it's, you know, doing that research initially to say, okay, what is the agency, and therefore what are the relevant questions to ask in the first place? Who are the specific people I'm about to meet, and have you kind of selected kind of the specific work in your portfolio to show to them? I'd also say think about the way the work flows. So when you're actually presenting the work in a interview scenario, kind of, you know, there's a kind of an approach of, you know, lead with that kind of the work that you kind of absolutely love, and not to say that you should present work that isn't good, but be really selective. Say you're presenting 5 pieces of work, make sure the start, middle, and the end are your best pieces of work, because that's going to keep the rhythm of the interview going. It's, you know, if you present your best pieces of work at the start and then you kind of end just kind of on a downward slope, you kind of end, you know, that's what they're going to remember about you at the end. So kind of think about how you're presenting what you're presenting and how you can get a bit of flow into the actual interview session itself.
Thank you, that's great. And so rejection is a part of any career journey. How can young creatives turn rejection into a learning opportunity and continue to grow? Can you share personal stories of a challenge that ultimately led to a positive scenario?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, rejection is sadly part of it. I think especially in the creative industries, it's something that you receive a lot. And I also think because as a creative you really care about your work, it just hurts that little bit more, and it's hard for it not to be personal. I'm lucky in that I haven't interviewed very much. So it's not that I've received rejection in that, you know, straight up, quite blanket, we are sorry, we can't accept your, you know, whatever it might be. But I did have something straight out of school. You know, I tell the story now of, I decided not to go to university. But at the time, when all my friends were deciding to go to uni, I got an offer of a job with a production company. I spoke to lots of people, and they were like, that's a brilliant idea. You know, don't go to uni, try this, and then if it doesn't work, you can go to uni later. So I sort of didn't do a personal statement. I was sort of through the last year of school like, yeah, I'm doing something different. And then it came to that September when all my friends were going off to uni, and that company ghosted me. Straight up, just ghosted me. We were meant to be going to Istanbul for a shoot. It was like an energy, they made sort of renewable energy focused films. And yeah, I sort of emailed saying, hi, flight details, anything. Like, I'm super laid back, but just a flight number would be fantastic. And nothing. And then eventually they did actually come back and say, oh, we've decided for X, Y, and Z, we're going to postpone it, but we'll be in touch in 3 months. And I was like, yeah, cool. And that was the moment I was gutted. I felt really silly as well to my friends who were like, how's it going? But that was the moment where I then just sent out so many emails to other production companies, other people who might want films, because I was desperate to prove them wrong. And then when they got back in touch, I was like, nah.
Amazing. Good for you.
I would say think about the interview process as not just I'm going to go in there and I need to do everything to get this job. I think look at it in terms of the opportunity to learn from someone as well. So every interview that we do, we always give feedback in that session to every creative that presents to us. So we'll always kind of try and add value to what's currently in your book. So it doesn't mean to say that every CD you meet, you kind of make every change that they recommend, because you have to have a bit of a point of view yourself as well about, do I agree with that, or do I think that's the right route to go down? But if you think about interviews a bit more like they're not, oh, am I going to be rejected or ghosted or not? Because I've definitely been ghosted a fair few times before I got my first role. But it's kind of thinking about, oh, what can I learn and how can I improve my book every time I meet a new CD? Because you'll be amazed, you meet your first few CDs after graduating and your book can start to really evolve, and all of a sudden it's in a place where it's in a much better place than it would have been 6 months before. So don't really think of it as rejection, think of it as an opportunity to add value to your book as well.
Yeah, I just think it's really important that if you do get a rejection from anywhere, whether that's from an interview situation or even like pitching an idea to a creative and getting that feedback, it's really important you're asking or getting really constructive feedback as to why you've been rejected or whatever it is isn't right. So always try and push for a bit more information or detail. Ask them how you can improve yourselves on the next time round and what you can do differently.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I know that in the past, if I have got rejected from, I studied architecture before starting this, but I stopped after a year because I decided I wanted to do this. But one of the things that I sometimes struggled with was when to stop trying. If you do email that person 5 times because you really want that job, when do you realize, and how do you persist and really try to get that job, but at the same time, how do you know when to stop?
Oh, that's a tough one. I would say maybe 2 or 3 times is probably enough.
Yeah.
But also accept maybe that place, maybe that dream agency isn't right for you yet. Maybe this is a stepping stone and you need to get to the next place to work up to get to that agency you really want to get to. I think that's really important. Don't dash your dreams, get rejected the first time. Just work towards it if that's your passion.
I'd also say consider, I think quite often those of us who are CDs or ECDs get a lot of emails from kind of juniors asking for advice. And as you can imagine, we're interviewing people, we're mentoring our team, we've got pitches on, and even if you get a brilliant person get in touch with us, we may not be able to get back to you straight away. So I think something that I've been discussing with a lot of new grads recently is think about, really research the agency and think about who else is in that team, who are the creatives, who are the senior creatives in that team. When you're asking for advice or mentors, they don't have to be people that are 10 or 20 years ahead of where you're at. A mentor can also be someone that's 1 year, 2 year, 3 years ahead of you, and they have a bit more tangible advice where they may be able to look at your, do a book crit with you, spend half an hour with you and actually give you some genuine advice about how they approached it. And they would have done it maybe a year, 2, 3 years ago and have a bit more real up-to-date knowledge about, actually, I've just done this, or I've just spoken to this CD, or, this is how my CD likes work presenting, for example. And that could really add value to the way you present your book and develop your book. So don't just think about who the CDs are or who the CCO is, because they may not always get back to you, but it doesn't mean that you're not good enough or, it's not worth kind of pursuing. It's just looking for different avenues. It goes back to the point I made earlier about, the phone call or knocking the door. It's kind of what other ways in are there? If you really think, you know, you're all creative, so be creative about the way you approach it. It isn't just applying on LinkedIn or emailing the CD. It's how else can I find out about this agency and see what it's actually like to work. You know, you can genuinely ask them as well. You know, they're not in the position where they're actually hiring you, so they can give you some genuine feedback about what it's actually like to work there as well.
I think that's a really, really good point. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I was going to say that also links back to thinking out the box, I guess, as well. Not just going straight to the top person, but actually looking for someone who may just be 5 years, you know, older than you and has kind of done that process quite recently in the times that we're in, I guess.
I also think, yeah, that it's a tricky balance, actually. When you were saying earlier about sort of persisting and just calling or thing, it's from a small company's perspective, I'm like, please don't. I will get back to you. But I think you can... Wait, I've totally lost my... What did you just say?
I was just saying, thinking out the box and going to someone who may just be 5 years older than you, not like, you know, the top person who's like the CEO.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I think people are flattered to... Like, oh, that's it. We often get people just emailing us out the blue saying, do you have any opportunities? And, you know, we are a small company. They come up quite rarely, and when they do, we put them out very boldly. Yeah. But the people I always get back to are the ones who say, I love what you're doing. I would love a coffee. And I think, especially in bigger companies, as you say, those slightly lower down, you know, it's very flattering to be asked for advice. And I think that's a nice way of introducing yourself and then... Yeah, cutting it. I've just basically said what you said and just reworded it. Perfect.
I think I tend to do this a little bit as well, so I'll give you a bit of a trade secret. LinkedIn is an amazing tool. We use it in many different ways. One of the things I love is when I see clients promote their work or a project or a personal highlight, because everyone wants feedback, everyone wants that recognition. Messaging them directly, if you're connected, and saying, hey, I've seen this, I think it's amazing, striking up the conversation, not going straight in for the kill, I'm looking for a job, but trying to build a bit of rapport, a bit of relationship with that person, engage in conversation. That's a really good way to get noticed, and it's a really good way to connect with people.
And Celia, also, this kind of links back. I know you have your group for female. Do you want to explain a bit about that? Because it kind of ties in.
Yeah, that's a good point. Communities are key as well. I think a bit like not just going for the people at the top, find a network of people around you who can empower you as well. They can push you forward for jobs. They might get a job and then, you know, they suddenly need more people on that team, so they need someone to bring them in. You might be that person. I run a community for female and non-binary filmmakers or creatives in the world of film. I appreciate it may not be for everyone in this room, but I think there are lots of communities out there. We have a Discord platform where we'll have lots of channels on asking for advice, tips and tricks. There's like finding out rates, what's going in the industry, and then a lot of jobs being shared. And I know that there are more communities than just ours out there, and I think finding your community, and then we do meetups, so these people become real, and then that, you never know who you might meet as well, because we've got all ranges of the industry within one communities, from students to people who have run their own company for kind of, you know, 20 plus years. So that can be a really nice way as well to be known and actually also put forward for jobs, because I think it is sad that still, especially in the film industry, it is, yeah, sadly, a lot of recommendation gets you very far, but that recommendation might just be, oh, I met them at this meetup the other day, and yeah, they seen sound, give them a try. You know, it might just not be, here's a job, because that'd be a bit much, but just like they might be worth a chat. Yeah. But that's why your community and platform is going to be fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. And also, those communities, as Dan said, you can also find on LinkedIn as well, which is super easily. But yeah, that is the aim with Prodigies, building a community. Little plug there. But okay, so next question. Soft skills, such as communications, teamwork, are such a hot topic at the moment now. What is the importance of these skills, and what do you look for beyond skills that are technical when hiring?
For me, I'm always looking, and I rate this really highly, really. I just really look at how people articulate themselves and how they discuss their work, and whether they're discussing in detail, whether they sound passionate, There's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes when we're interviewing people that we're looking for, really. So I definitely think people that come across as passionate, they're also asking me the right questions as well, so they're actually invested in me and more curious is really important.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also people are willing to put in, for companies of my size where we don't have formal structures of how to train up junior people, it is always just a massive input from our team side. And I think we are also much more willing to do that when that person comes with boundless enthusiasm, positivity, a willingness to try, ambition, all those things. If they get it wrong multiple times in a row, that's okay, because they've got all these other soft skills which go alongside it, so we can see that they're going to get there, or that they'll definitely try. And I think on the counter, if it's someone who doesn't have all those and they make a few errors, you might just go, do you know what? I don't know. And that's where it's like you've just got to show that, yeah, there's more than just your technical skill that you've got.
Yeah, I'd say that I think communication's always been an important part of the role, but I think now more than ever, because of hybrid working and the different ways agencies are set up, I think it's particularly challenging for juniors, making your first step into the industry, because a lot of senior creatives aren't always in the office all the time. So the way to really be able to be kind of successful really is if you demonstrate that you're a proactive person. You're not always the kind of person that's always waiting for people to get in touch with you. You'll reach out to people, you'll open those communication channels, and you'll be proactive about the way you're approaching your work. And if you can demonstrate that through your portfolio as well, so, have you got some self-initiated projects in your portfolio? Have you done some stuff for a small business, for example, or a little bit of freelance stuff? It kind of suddenly makes you come across like you've not just followed the same system that everyone else has, but actually you've been proactive in terms of different ways and different elements in your portfolio, and therefore actually all of a sudden we think, oh, actually this person has got a bit of that self-starter mentality, and I think that can go a really long way.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I think also it's important to note that although soft skills aren't, the technical skills like drawing or things like that, and they might just be communications, it's not to say that you can't learn those as well, right? I mean, for example, like public speaking. When I was 5, I literally wanted to be a singer so bad and would always go on stage, but I just couldn't do it. And I'm not saying I'm great at it now, but like you can learn those things, or like pitching to a business. And so kind of what tips do you have when it comes to building up those soft skills as well?
I'd say just be open. I still feel like I'm learning now,
Yeah.
like nearly 20 years into the industry, I'm still learning how to develop my skills. And I think that is the thing, Dan mentioned earlier about curiosity, being curious about your own skill set as well. How can you always be developing ongoing and adding new skills to your own remit ongoing? It isn't one of those things where you walk in on your first day and someone's going to expect you to be perfect at everything, but having that kind of attitude where you're passionate and you're willing to learn and you're demonstrating that you've got that kind of attitude, I think that in itself goes a long way.
Yeah, and I think also opening up those feedback channels as early as you can and saying, actually, like, I really want to learn. Please, can you give me feedback? Learning from that. So almost you acknowledge maybe your weaknesses, and then say, look, I really want to work on this. Please, can you give me direct tips on how you think I can improve, rather than hoping that they won't notice that maybe you don't like public speaking and trying to avoid all of those things.
I think that's super important as well, because I also think it's quite scary to maybe say that, like especially if it's actually a small or big business, to actually say that kind of shows that you don't feel comfortable in that. But are you guys kind of saying that actually that is a strong point and it's something to be admired, to kind of admit what you want to learn and may not be super strong at yet?
The fact that you've shown the kind of attitude that you want to learn, I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
That's all we can really expect from anyone coming into the industry, because no one knows it all. Doesn't matter what level you're at. So,
thank you. And so with this kind of brings us on quite nicely to the next question is, with new technologies and techniques constantly emerging, how do you think creatives can embrace change and use it to their advantages in their careers?
Well, I mean, I guess in this industry, in the creative industry, like you said, everything's evolving and changing all the time. So I think it's quite important you're abreast of what's happening and keeping on top of the changes. But I don't think you have to be an expert in all of them. Like, you'll see trends, you'll see certain things which will start to take off and become quite in-demand requirements. Like, motion design is quite imperative now for most designers to have a grasp of. We're seeing the emergence of AI, not really sure how much it's going to affect us moving forward, but it's good to be aware of what's happening in those areas and just having an awareness, I guess, more than anything.
Yeah, definitely to not be naive to it, but also I think to stick with what you, I don't mean, I guess, on the software side, but more just like, don't let those trends or the noise that's happening in the industry disrupt you from what you know is your kind of creative voice. I think I think it's easy that way then for your work to become like the sea of other people who are doing that kind of trendy work, playing with the new AI tool or whatever it might be. So I think just sort of be aware of it, but only take the bits from it and make it enhance your work rather than let it overcome it all.
yeah, I think being open to change, realizing that I think people get caught up more recently about trends are changing quicker than they've ever kind of changed before. So, new subcultures are coming up on TikTok kind of every other week, and then we suddenly need to tap into that as a brand, and all that kind of stuff does happen. But I think being open to change, and like I was saying at the start, I started my career as a web designer, and then it was kind of like, oh, it's more about social now, and then all of a sudden it's kind of VR and AR, and then AI, or last year people were talking about the metaverse, and now it is, how can we have AI as part of video, for example. These things are happening, and like the panel said, it's kind of being able to, realise that stuff is happening, not being blind to it. You don't want to be the creative in the corner who is sitting there going, I'm just going to ignore everything that's going on out there, because as creatives, we need to be open to what's going on out there, but also being selective. Is this relevant for what I'm doing? Or, when you're in an agency, is this relevant for what we're doing at the agency right now? Or is it relevant for the brands that we're working with right now? But more than anything, having that curiosity, because I think being open really adds value to you as a creative, and then you can kind of make the decision about, what specifically can I take on board as part of my work?
Quickly as well, I think if you can get to the stage where you feel comfortable and confident in a lot of different technology, that would be the most empowering thing, is to think, do you know what? Whatever a new software pops up and becomes the thing that this company wants me to use, or whatever new technique, I feel sort of techie enough that actually that's not going to scare me, because I think a lot of softwares have a lot of similarities and then they're branded and have different things. But actually, if you just feel like, I've had people who I'll say, oh, do you work with this editing software? And they're like, no, but I can. And I'm like, okay, I trust you. If you're skilled at one, it's just a different language almost that you just move over to. And I think that would help.
I think that's a really good point. And so before we started developing Prodigies, which is launching in August, I had never, built a website, done any kind of web design development. And to be honest, obviously I'm still not an expert at all. But I think it's more, and what you're kind of saying, I think, is it's more of a mindset of actually I can do it if I put my mind to it. And I can learn, or I can just ask someone who is really skilled at that, and kind of understand you don't actually need to know everything, but as long as you try and you stay curious, which is what you guys are saying as well. So super interesting, thank you. I'm just going to pull up my next question. So finally, looking ahead, what trends do you see shaping the future of talent hiring in the creative industries? Maybe Dan, you can start this one.
Well, we're starting to see AI potentially play a part in that, but I think at the moment, nothing's changed drastically, thank God.
Good.
Nothing we're seeing anyway, so that's a positive.
I think, fortunately, I think companies are being forced to be more flexible. So I think that for, the kind of hiring landscape, I think helps in terms of you can come with, there should be companies out there. I guess it comes back to your culture fit question of how do you know if a company is the right culture for you, is look at their different policies. And I don't mean like beers on the roof terrace on a Tuesday, but more like, oh, I have a child, maybe I need to go and, have flexible working, or like those kind of policies, because not all companies offer it, and it's sort of working out which of their different flexibilities maybe work for you, which I think is a plus, definitely. And I also think, I just think there's potentially a more positive hiring landscape, especially in the film world. It's what we've been big pushing on with Making Moves as well, which is the name of the community I failed to mention earlier. But just trying to increase the amount of underrepresented talent on sets, and making sure that there are diverse voices in creative projects, because I think when there's not that, you can see it in the end result. So I think companies as well are acknowledging that with who they're hiring as well.
Yeah, just to second that, I mean, we've definitely seen a shift since COVID. We've got a lot more opportunities to work flexibly, hybrid working. We've also considered the base salary for juniors, so I think that's definitely evolved over my career, where we go in and either you do free placements or you do kind of minimum wage placements, and now that's definitely kind of evolved. And I think, like Dan was saying, nothing apart from that really has, changed. It's the same as, when I started, like almost 20 years ago. It's having passion, it's being diligent, and it's being curious. And if you have those three things, in 20 years' time, you'll still have a career in the industry. It doesn't matter what the latest buzzword is then, the AI, whatever AI is in 20 years' time. If you have those three things, then you'll still have a role in the creative industries, because you've been willing to, show you are passionate about it, you're open to new things, you're open to change, and you're willing to work for it.
I also think on that passion and curiosity, if you are, and this goes back a little bit to one of our earlier things, but if you are doing research for a company and you are struggling to find that passion and curiosity, and you're nervous that you're going to just be blagging it, that's okay, because it just probably means that company isn't right for you, and you don't want to accidentally wing it and then be stuck in a situation where you struggle to find that passion and curiosity every day. So I think lean into the opportunities that do excite you, and save your time, and don't apply to the ones that don't, and put that time towards making your application better for the ones that really do.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, and also kind of realizing that if you do decide to go down one route, like it sounds like you're saying that, it's absolutely fine to change midways and just be like, actually, I've done this for like 3 months or however long, and it's just not right for me, and this is a better way to get in. And I mean, just from kind of talking to different people, it seems like people are more open to that of, you can have lots of different careers, you can switch quite a lot, and it's not like frowned upon. But would you agree with that?
I don't think it's frowned upon. I mean, I think the more senior you get, I do kind of like to see that journey and progression, and like to see your work history and see there's a sort of a flow to that. If someone's chopped changed too much, I do start to question why, and I start to question their commitments to those roles. So, there's a bit of a fine balance there.
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I think I got asked this question by some grads recently, and I 100% agree with Dan. I mean, I've been at the agency I'm at for a long time, and I do think if someone's really chopped and changed their CV, I do kind of question, are they really committed to what's going on? But I'd also say, if you're somewhere where you're not getting any support, you're not getting no senior creatives, no CDs giving you the time of day, they've left you to it, you're working night and day, and they're just expecting you to fend for yourself as a junior, don't stand for it, get out. There are so many agencies out there, there's so many creatives who do have a passion for sharing their knowledge with junior talent, and go and work somewhere like that, because it can be soul destroying as a creative, as a junior starting somewhere and just not getting that support, and it's really not fair. So don't stand for it and work somewhere where you are getting that support.
I think that's really well said. Thank you guys so much, and we're going to take some questions as well. So does anyone have any questions?
Silence, we can go now.
Yeah, you never know. That's okay. Well, there is one there. And
so often I've been told two things. Like, one is to have as many skills as you can, but I've also been told to specialise in one. What would you say on that?
I'll start that one off. So I actually did what was called a multimedia degree back in the day. I don't think it actually exists anymore. I'm really showing my age now. I think it's probably called digital design now, but I think my degree was something like film history and web designing and coding. So I kind of graduated with all these different things, and I was like, I just feel like I'm rubbish, actually. I'm not a great creative at all. And it was when I started kind of really honing in to a few of those skills that really kind of helped me feel more confident in what I was doing and helped me actually craft more of what I was doing. So I think that I'm not anti having that base knowledge of a range of things. And I think now that I'm in a senior position, I actually manage not just people that are designers, I manage creatives, technologists, developers, animators, because I have that base knowledge of all of those roles. Actually, it's helped me be a better leader because I can communicate with them a lot more easier, because it's not just a case of them saying, oh, this can't possibly be done. It's kind of sitting with them and thinking, actually, how can we solve this problem together, and actually having the language that they speak in order to communicate with them. So it's not, when you're a junior, it's not a bad thing to kind of have a range of those skills. And I think more than ever, actually, we are expecting juniors to be able to design and animate and think about digital and print and all of these things. That's what a lot of integrated agencies are expecting. But also, it's also worth thinking about, what are you most passionate about? So all of the juniors, at Crow, they all have a very varied skill set, but they also have something about them. They're really into their illustration, or they're really into their animation, or they're really into their digital design. So it's always good to have that range, but also think about what's one or two things that you are really passionate about, you really want to spend time in crafting, because it's worth having basically the best of both.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a contradiction, really. And I love niche. To me, I get quite excited about people who are really passionate and drill down on what they're really excited about. But, most of our clients are ad agencies now. Those agencies now have gone. They're not just doing adverts all day long. These agencies are now doing branding, advertising, social. So they're now looking for designers who have a wider remit in their portfolio. So it does contradict itself. But I think, show that breadth, but also, again, like you said, also show where you can knuckle down and really add value in certain areas, and what your key skills are.
Yeah, I think I was told when I was kind of fresh, trying to find work that time, as I said, where I was really nervous about what I was going to do. I spoke to a production company, and they were like, because I was a sort of videographer, did it all, and they were like, you're just not going to get work if you don't decide if you're going to be an editor or, on set as doing camera or directing, whatever. And luckily for me, I kind of ignored them, and I just said, actually, do you know what? I love doing all these things, and I also think I'm quite good at doing all these things. It's not that I have one true strength, so I'm going to try and sit with that. And fortunately for me, I was able to then build that into having the skills to run my own company. And I also hired someone, one of my first hires was someone who just also kind of did it all. And maybe that's that small companies as well will really benefit from having people, make sure you're not being taken for a ride, being asked to do 5 different job titles, but, just being able to go, yeah, no, I can quickly delve into that. I think that can be really valuable. But Basically, like, no right, no
I
wrong.
don't think there's a right or wrong. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it really comes down to the person who you're meeting, like their personal preferences. And you know, every head of design or creative will have a different approach to design and creative, and be looking for different things in your portfolio. So no two people are the same.
And maybe being able to describe why you've niched or why you're a multidisciplinary. Just being able to tell that story.
Yeah, just kind of quickly as well, I'd say, think about what makes you tick. Is it more really, really crafting something and kind of being on that same type of work day in, day out? Or is it, I'm not sure what I'm going to be working on today. It could be some editing, it could be shooting something, it could be some illustration. You know, we have a bunch of people in our team who are content creatives, who are coming up with the idea, they're going out and shooting it, they're editing it, they're animating it, you know, they're adding motion graphics, and they understand everything that's going on in social. And that's a really varied role, but at the same time, it's specialist in terms of what's going on in social, what's relevant for social. So it's kind of, yeah, hopefully that answers your question, but it's whatever you want it to be. Be a specialist or be a generalist. Both can work.
And I guess you can change as well midway through as well.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, so there was another person who asked a question. Can you raise your hands up again, and then I can... Okay, person at the back first.
When you go for an interview and they give you an unpaid design task, how do you approach it?
I'm not a fan of design tasks, personally.
Yeah, I'm conflicted because, and I'm not a fan, but I'd be lying if I said I haven't given some. We once, for one interview round for an editor, we did paid days to come in and do like a trial day with an interview, and we paid them for that. We have also done some quite small tasks recently for like producer roles where it's essentially sort of replying to, you know, it's like drafting, replying to emails and things like that, and we haven't paid for that. So I don't feel great about it. Basically. I wish it wasn't the case, and maybe that's something we can take away and change.
Yeah, I think that sometimes, the early time, we have asked for some tasks in the past, and I think the only time we've asked for it is when your portfolio isn't really demonstrating whether you'd be able to take on the kind of work that we do. And I think quite often that's an open conversation of, you know, would you like the opportunity to do something? And it doesn't ever get kind of used in terms of commercially. It's usually a brief that one of our designers or creatives has already worked on. So it's not kind of used, but it's kind of, you know, if your portfolio isn't at the level where we can easily see that you'd be able to sit within the team, then it's kind of an opportunity to work on that. Equally, you know, if your portfolio does that, you know, like I said the other day, earlier, you know, we had a junior designer come in and he had a great portfolio. We actually offered him the job, you know, not just a placement, a full-time role straight away. So if your portfolio is strong enough, it should do the hard work for you. And really, you know, you shouldn't, if you've got all the work in there, you shouldn't really be needing to do those kind of tasks.
It is tough because there are quite a lot of companies and agencies now that make it mandatory. And obviously, when you're in that situation, you can't say, well, I don't want to do it. So unfortunately, it really is kind of a matter of doing the best you can, putting that passion into it, and hopefully you're successful.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it can add value to your book as well. So if it's a kind of project where you've not got that kind of thing already in your portfolio, it could end up being a portfolio piece. I guess that's the only reason I would personally take it on, because it's actually going to add value to you rather than just following the process of the interview, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And I'm also really curious, how come you don't do kind of project-based work for interviews or like briefs? I know you said that's not.
I mean, for us, obviously, when we meet people, we're looking to sort of hopefully send them to a list of agencies. All those agencies are different. I think giving them one brief wouldn't fit every single client we'd send it to. So I think that's a bit more bespoke to that person if you're going to do it. There isn't like a generalist design task we could set. So.
Thank you. Brilliant. That's great. Yes.
being on the other side of the table, I want to know, on the employee's perspective, is there any obstacles that you guys face in terms of searching for the right person to recruit, or trying to get to know them? Is there any sort of problems that you wish you could overcome? I just want to know your perspective on that.
I think one of the biggest challenges we sometimes find is we sometimes actually get over 1,000 applicants for some of our junior roles, and we do have a HR team, but quite often it can be a bit of a time delay between us really wanting to get people in and us actually even seeing the initial CV and portfolio. And then even when we do get the portfolio through, out of those 1,000 people, we might still have 100 portfolios to go through. So it's a big volume of work, and I think it ladders up to back, what we were saying earlier about kind of being really clear with your portfolio. Is it clean and easy to navigate? Really back to basics, has your CV got spelling mistakes? When you've kind of written your cover letter or your initial contact email, have you got the spelling of the CD's name correct? Little things like that really kind of can help you stand out. And if you do those few things, even if there's 1,000 applicants, you'll still stand out because you've made the effort to make it easy for the CD looking through your work.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's almost just make sure that nothing is creating a barrier for you getting through to that first stage, because the amount of times portfolio links don't work. And yeah, we're a small company and 350 applications for our last thing. We don't have HR. It's just me going through them. And if I can't find their links and then I can't find it on the CV, I don't have time to email them and say, hey, I'm so sorry you didn't link your portfolio correctly. Can you resend it? I will just go, no. And that's brutal, but you kind of have to do it. And I think also, similarly, from a design perspective, creative perspective, make your CV look nice. The amount of creative jobs we put out, and we'll get sort of 5-page CVs that look like they've been formatted, just, ugh. I'm like, you're going for a creative role. This is almost the first stage of your interview, is just even how it looks. It doesn't need to be all singing or dancing, but is it legible? Is the information all clearly there? That will help.
Don't put lots of stuff in your CV just to bulk out a CV for the sake of it. A one-page, simple CV that's clean, easy to read, can glance your information really quickly. That's what we're after, really. We're not after that 5-page CV because no one has time to read that.
I think from my perspective of recruitment agencies, try and find out which recruiters you're sending your details to, what those creative recruitment agencies specialize in, what areas. With us, we're primarily advertising, a bit of branding. So we see amazing applicants come through and maybe come from sort of UX, UI product backgrounds, but we don't really work with those clients. So for us, you may be amazing, but I just don't have the connections to help you find work in the right places. So just try and dig a bit deeper as recruiters and ask them, which clients are you working with? What sort of agencies are you working with? And then you'll get a better understanding of who you're speaking to and whether they're worth your time, or, whether you should be investing your time in trying to find other contacts.
I also think with the cover letter, don't be afraid to make it personal. Say that not just that you thought that the work they'd put out was fantastic, but be like, I loved what Celia did on that last project. That was really cool. Or, the atmosphere that comes across from your Instagram between X, Y, and Z, or whatever it might be that you're trying to say. Just that, honestly, when you're reading a sea of cover letters, even when it's not written in and I appreciate this may not be the same for all companies, ours is more on the informal scale, but when it's not all written in that kind of formal jargon and it's a little bit more chatty, I'm suddenly oh, hello, yeah, okay, I'm here, I'm listening. And I think that sometimes is just a good way to, we're all people, it's a person, currently, not AI yet.
I think with cover letters as well, a lot of people get a little bit confused and write a cover letter and rehash their CV and their experience. A cover letter shouldn't be that. It shouldn't be a rehash of or a synopsis of your CV. Maybe try and talk a bit more about your passions, what you want to achieve, when you want to get to, where you see yourself again connecting with the business, personalize it for that place where you're sending it to. Spend a lot of time on that and try and tailor it to the person you're sending it to.
Sorry, another one. But also just, I think a lot of cover letters spend time saying why you want the job. I would argue it's much better to say why you think that company could really benefit from having you.
Definitely, and I think we've alluded to it a little bit today, but when I graduated, I didn't really understand there were so many different types of agencies out there. You just think, oh, they're ad agencies or they're design agencies, but there's so many different types of agencies, different sizes of agencies. Really think about what kind of place you want to be. Really look at the kind of work that they produce, because sending your CV to somewhere that you don't want to be anyway, that's a waste of the CD's time and it's a waste of your time. So really crafting those cover letters specifically for where you want to be will put you in a better position than just firing it off everywhere, because you're just going to end up, even if you end up getting the job, you're going to be somewhere where you don't really want to be anyway. So
that's really great. And I think we're going to, so thank you so much, guys. I think we're going to end the talk and kind of split up. So you guys can still ask questions, but more in just like little groups and more personal questions. So firstly, round of applause for the amazing speakers. Thank you so much.
thank you.
And yeah, we can split up into groups, and I will also, there'll be a few leaflets for the platform Prodigies, just talking about CVs. If you did ever want to showcase your talents, then yeah, we'll have Prodigies soon. So yeah, we're going to do that. Thank you, guys.